Welcome back. Ukraine is known as the breadbasket of Europe, but after a year of conflict, its agriculture sector is a casualty of war. Earlier, I spoke to Arif Husain, the chief economist of the World Food Program, about food insecurity situation there and how Russia might leverage that still in the year ahead. Arif Husain, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you for having me.
We are, of course, 1 year now into the war in Ukraine, and we've talked about a lot through the year of how the conflict is impacting different things, including food security. Can you give us a sense of whether things have stabilized from that perspective?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine. It's already 1 year, and if it is a war, what that means is that things get compounded. So the level of misery in Ukraine is unimaginable. I can tell you that there are about 11 million people who are in a hunger crisis in Ukraine. There are places people are displaced both inside the country. There are about 5 million people there. There are about another 8 million people who are displaced outside the country, meaning in different parts of Europe. As areas are opening up, we are seeing, not only a lot of human suffering, but also, the damage to the infrastructure, to the social infrastructure. So life is extremely, extremely hard. And that goes in places like in the eastern part of the country, in the southern part of the country. If you look on the agricultural side, which is the best breadbasket of the country, about a quarter of land cannot be planted because of mines and things like that. Mm-hmm. And then there is a shortage of all kinds of agricultural inputs, whether they be seeds, whether it be fertilizer, whether it be machinery or fuel for that. And all in all, it's a really miserable situation. Why? Because Ukraine is strong, and they've been fighting all of this for 1 year, and there is still no end in sight.
Yeah, and it's not just
this is what's going on in Ukraine.
And it's not just the suffering in Ukraine, to your point. It's how the breadbasket of the world, how that impacts
Absolutely.
Other parts of the world. The Black Sea Grain Initiative took an awful long time to get sorted, to allow for grain to be exported from 3 ports. That deal expires mid-March. What's being done to extend it, and how likely do you think that is?
Yeah, like you said, Ukraine on a good day before the war was feeding, equivalent of 400 million people outside. And that had pretty much come to a standstill when this war started. And then, World Food Program, UN, Turkey, were front and center together with Ukraine and Russia to get this Black Sea Initiative going, which has been quite substantial in terms of moving the food out. Almost 22 million tons of food have moved in the last 6 months, which kind of brought prices down and stabilized the markets. But like you said, this thing is coming to an end mid-March. What we are saying, what we are appealing to all the parties involved is that this is something which must continue. It must continue not only for Ukraine, but for the world. And it should, in fact, be indefinite till this war comes to an end. And in fact, it should be expanded to other ports so more food, more commodities can come out so that we have a better situation outside of Ukraine, and also we are able to support farmers inside Ukraine. It doesn't make sense for people to grow if they cannot send it out. So it has.
Yeah. And in the same way that we see Russia attacking energy infrastructure as part of its attempt to cause pain and suffering, as you point out, to Ukraine, do you think that they are doing a similar thing with agricultural infrastructure and food supply for the world? Do you have the feeling that this is a motivated attack to try and cause harm?
Look, we are in the business of seeing what is happening on the ground. Are people suffering? And all I can tell you is that there are 345 million people who are in hunger crisis right now. You've got food inflation upwards of 15% year on year in 70 plus countries. Yeah. You got food inflation upwards of 50% in dozens of countries. You got food inflation upwards of 100% in 5-6 countries. I mean, so regardless of who's doing what, all we know is because of this war, the situation out there is frankly unimaginable.
Canada is the 4th largest single donor country to the World Food Program, $450 million or so. I wonder how much longer you expect that Canada and other countries will have to give large amounts of money to sustain things, given the situation in Ukraine.
Look, I mean, the first and foremost, I think most of the countries they stepped up. Just to let you know, in terms of the World Food Program, in 2022 we got record levels of financing, which was at 14.4 billion, of which about half came from the U.S. and then Germany, yourselves, and others stepped up in a very big way. The problem is that the root cause is still there.
Yeah.
So unless this war is resolved, why would you expect needs to come down? And if the needs are not going to come down, then why would you expect, the monies needed to sort that out are going to come down? So it is almost logical to see this year as bad as, frankly, the last year. And hence, we will require, same amount of resources, if not more, this year, because, again, if you were in trouble last year and you're again in trouble this year, it is compounded. So your level of coping is lesser with every single day that passes. And that's what we are seeing, not in one country, not in 2 countries, but in dozens of countries.
Arif Husain, thank you for your perspective. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much for having me.